The movie begins with a scene at the Senate Armed Services Committee, where Theodore Hayes, a retired military officer being considered for Navy Secretary, talks about the limited opportunities for women in the Navy. As he tries to explain the policies, Senator Lillian DeHaven from Texas, who is leading the meeting, interrupts him. She questions his reasoning and criticizes the Navy's long-standing bias against women. To support her argument, she reveals a secret document called the Lark Report and gives copies to the committee members. Senator DeHaven reads parts of the report that include negative comments from senior Navy officials, showing a culture of sexism. After this tense hearing, the Navy quickly arranges a private meeting with Senator DeHaven. In her office, she meets with representatives from the Department of Defense. These officials strongly oppose allowing women in the Navy and suggest a plan to undermine Lillian's efforts. They propose that a female cadet must complete the Navy's toughest training program. Lillian understands that the Department of Defense is trying to set her candidate up for failure by choosing a particularly difficult program. However, she agrees to the plan, knowing that the publicity could help her political career. Following the meeting, the Department of Defense officials speak with Theodore outside the Senate building. They decide on the U.S. Navy Combined Reconnaissance Team as the program for Lillian's female candidate. This program is extremely tough, with 60% of participants usually dropping out before the end of the fourth week, which includes the infamous Hell Week. The officials believe that no woman could endure even the first week of the program. The story then shifts to a Naval Satellite Monitoring Center where Lieutenant Jordan O'Neill, a topographic analyst, is focused on ensuring the safe return of a SEAL team from a dangerous war zone. Communication with the team has been lost, and one official suggests sending more support, which would delay the extraction by 18 minutes as reinforcements move to the rescue location. However, Lieutenant O'Neill proposes changing the extraction point, arguing that the SEAL team's combat experience would lead them to find alternative escape routes despite the loss of communication. She quickly examines the satellite images and identifies a new location that could cut the rescue time in half. Her plan is approved, and within 9 minutes, the SEAL team reconnects from the exact spot Lieutenant O'Neill had suggested, leading to a successful and timely rescue. At the same time, Senator Lillian reviews a list of potential candidates for the Navy's CRT program. She rejects a triathlete for being too thin and a champion powerlifter for looking too muscular, almost like a man. Senator Lillian is looking for someone who looks traditionally feminine, wanting to show that women don't need to rely solely on physical strength to succeed in the Navy. She is drawn to Lieutenant O'Neill, who has an impressive background as both a former Olympic triathlon contender and an excellent student, fitting Lillian's criteria perfectly. Later, after a long day, Lieutenant O'Neill meets with her fiancé, Lieutenant Commander Royce Harper, an operations officer in the Navy. He compliments her on how she managed the difficult situation, but warns her not to get too involved in frontline issues, reminding her that she is an intelligence officer. During their conversation, Lieutenant O'Neill is suddenly called to meet with Senator Lillian at her office. In the next scene, Senator Lillian gives Lieutenant O'Neill the CRT program details and explains its importance. She tells Lieutenant O'Neill that her success could open doors for future women in the Navy. That evening, Lieutenant O'Neill goes home and discusses the proposal with her fiancé, Royce, who reacts with little enthusiasm. He highlights several concerns. The program's intense training could cause serious physical harm. She would have to live and train with men who might not accept her. And if she succeeds, her active duty would be extended, keeping them apart longer. Royce admits that he isn't keen on being separated for such a long time, making Lieutenant O'Neill feel unappreciated and doubt their relationship. This uncertainty strengthens her determination to succeed, and she decides to join the CRT program. A few days later, Lieutenant O'Neill arrives at the training center, where the commanding officer gives her a private room, separating her from the male trainees. The men are unhappy about a woman joining their ranks, and rumors quickly spread. During her first dinner in the mess hall, she faces open sexism and rude comments from the male trainees. Training begins the next day, with the commanding officer warning that only a few will make it through the first 3 weeks. He introduces Command Master Chief John Ergale, the chief trainer, who is strict and treats everyone the same, regardless of gender. As he checks the uniforms, he recites D.H. Lawrence's poem Self-Pity, reminding the trainees not to feel sorry for themselves, setting the tone for the tough weeks ahead. The training starts with the trainees moving heavy military boats to the ocean and quickly jumping off. The exercises are extremely challenging, pushing their physical limits. During these tough drills, Command Master Chief John constantly pushes them to quit, reminding them that they can ring a bell in the training area 3 times to signal they are giving up. Lieutenant O'Neill is treated just as harshly as her male teammates, although she still faces sexist comments from some of them. As the night progresses, the stress gets worse. The trainees have only 4 minutes to eat their dinner, causing chaos in the mess hall. Just as they start eating, the trainers order them back outside, forcing them to throw their food in the trash and continue training on empty stomachs. This cycle of tough routines continues the next day, with the trainees practicing in the cold seawater until early morning, followed by a medical checkup and being told they can eat the food they had thrown away. Lieutenant O'Neill cleverly saves a piece of bread in her pocket and eats it secretly later. After dinner, Command Master Chief John assigns the trainees to write an essay about why they joined the U.S. Navy. He plays soft opera music, hoping to make the tired and hungry trainees fall asleep, knowing that those who doze off will be expelled. Lieutenant O'Neill, with the extra energy from the bread she saved, manages to stay awake. 15 minutes into the writing, John suddenly orders them back outside to complete an obstacle course under live gunfire. When she learns that a lower platform will be set up to help her with some obstacles, Lieutenant O'Neill refuses, insisting on being treated like the men. Despite her objections, she is told that military rules require different obstacle heights for female trainees compared to male ones. During the training, John notices that O'Neill refuses to use the special platforms, completing each obstacle just like the male trainees. In a wall-climbing exercise, she even helps her teammates by offering her back as a step, but they don't return the favor, leaving her stuck on the wall. This highlights the ongoing resentment among some trainees who are unhappy about a woman joining a traditionally male-dominated program. As the intense 20-hour daily training sessions go on, many trainees start to lose their resolve and drop out. However, Lieutenant O'Neill continues, surprising everyone with her determination. Despite her perseverance, Lieutenant O'Neill is still bothered by the platform that was offered to her on the obstacle course. She tries to speak with the commanding officer about getting equal treatment, but instead, she faces rude comments that show his dislike for her being there. Feeling sidelined, she decides to make a bold move. She goes to a barbershop and cuts off her hair, shedding her feminine look. She then returns to her private quarters, gathers her things, and moves into the shared sleeping area with the male trainees. Lieutenant O'Neill's move into the common hall makes many of the men uncomfortable, especially when she brings personal hygiene items like tampons. Command Master John notices her defiant act of integration, but is clearly not happy with her bold stance. The story shifts to Theodore, who is now the Secretary of the Navy. He and other top officials from the Department of Defense are upset to hear that Lieutenant O'Neill has survived the first 3 weeks of the tough training. Although this trial was supposed to be secret, news of Lieutenant O'Neill's success has leaked to the media, and she has been dubbed G.I. Jane by the public, who don't know her real identity. Back at the training camp, the challenges become tougher, but G.I. Jane doesn't give up. Determined to prove the sexist doubters wrong, she trains even harder, losing body fat and gaining muscle. The media grows more interested in her story, eager to cover how she is overcoming the Navy's tough training. During a quiet moment in the shower, Command Master Chief John visits Lieutenant O'Neill to inform her that the most senior member of her team has been hospitalized with a broken leg, making her the new team leader because of her experience. Meanwhile, Department of Defense officials, including Secretary Theodore, are frustrated by Lieutenant O'Neill's survival through the difficult Hell Week and her ability to keep up with the men. They hope that the upcoming SEER, or known as Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape training will finally break her. SEER training soon begins, with the trainees being dropped into a secret location. Their mission is to find a target, gather information, and avoid being captured. This training is not just physically tough, it mimics real-life combat situations. If trainees call for an early extraction or are captured, they're treated like real prisoners of war, adding to the exercise's realism. During SEER training, problems arise when 2 of Lieutenant O'Neill's teammates get captured after ignoring her orders. Another teammate breaks his leg while trying to reach a safe zone. When Lieutenant O'Neill tries to help him, she is also captured. The training officers do not help the injured trainee, forcing him under pressure to reveal his team's location, leading to his withdrawal from the exercise. When it's Lieutenant O'Neill's turn to be interrogated, she faces Command Master Chief John. With her hands tied, she endures harsh beatings from him. As the violence increases, another trainer objects but is ignored by John. The confrontation escalates as John pushes Lieutenant O'Neill's head through a door and then forces her face into freezing water, using this harsh treatment to try to get her to reveal her team's position. Despite the intense pressure, Lieutenant O'Neill encourages her team to stay silent. John pushes the limits of the exercise by threatening more violence and begins to tear at her clothes, claiming it reflects the realities of war. In a bold move, Lieutenant O'Neill manages to hit John hard in a sensitive spot and follows up with 2 strong kicks. John, however, fights back, overpowers her, and knocks her out. He then tells the other trainees that his actions were meant to show that Lieutenant O'Neill is not fit for combat. Despite her injuries, Lieutenant O'Neill regains consciousness and defiantly tells John to kiss her backside. Her courage sparks her teammates to join in, shouting similar taunts at John. Through these challenges, Lieutenant O'Neill turns a diverse group of soldiers into a united team and earns John's reluctant respect. News of G.I. Jane completing SEER training reaches Senator Lillian, who is thrilled by Lieutenant O'Neill's success. Lieutenant O'Neill's bravery wins her the respect and friendship of her fellow trainees, who start to see her as one of their own. However, during a day off at the beach with some female friends, someone secretly takes photos of them. These photos are later shown to senior military officials, who accuse Lieutenant O'Neill of misconduct, suggesting she has brought shame to her team and the Navy by being seen in a compromising situation with other female officers. Lieutenant O'Neill is told that she must pause her training while an investigation into the photos takes place. Lieutenant O'Neill, determined to keep going, suspects that the accusations are a plot to stop her progress. She learns that even if she is cleared, she would have to restart the entire program, making all her hard work pointless. Frustrated by the ongoing efforts to sabotage her, Lieutenant O'Neill decides to ring the bell 3 times, signaling her choice to leave the program. She then goes home to her fiancé, who reveals shocking news. The anonymous photos were sent out from Senator Lillian's office, the same person who had been supporting her. It becomes clear that Senator Lillian had been using Lieutenant O'Neill's journey for her political agenda. Lillian wanted Lieutenant O'Neill to go far enough to challenge the men, but planned to use her success to make deals with the Navy to keep military bases open in Texas. When confronted, Senator Lillian first denies being involved, but she eventually admits that she used Lieutenant O'Neill to gain political leverage. After learning the truth, Lieutenant O'Neill threatens to expose the scandal to the media, unafraid to reveal how she was manipulated for political purposes. With this new understanding and determination, Lieutenant O'Neill returns to the training center, where her peers welcome her back warmly. Re-energized and fully supported, she prepares to face the final challenges of her training. The training was suddenly interrupted by an emergency that needed the immediate help of the CRT trainees. A satellite powered by plutonium had crashed in the Libyan desert, and a group of U.S. Army Rangers sent to recover the plutonium faced issues with their extraction. The trainees were quickly sent in to support the Rangers' evacuation. During the operation, Lieutenant O'Neill was almost spotted by a Libyan soldier. To protect her, John had to take out the soldier, which accidentally revealed their position and led to a fight with Libyan forces. At the same time, John James was separated from his team and found himself in a dangerous situation. Lieutenant O'Neill noticed on the map that the Master Chief was moving in the wrong direction, putting him at serious risk. Taking charge in the leader's absence, Lieutenant O'Neill showed great leadership and tactical skill by navigating through a dangerous path filled with mines to rescue the Master Chief. With help from her teammate McCool, their mission was supported by helicopter gunships, which provided a strong counterattack. The mission ended successfully, and everyone involved was officially accepted into the CRT. In the final scene, Command Master Chief Ergale awards Lieutenant O'Neill his Navy Cross and a book of poetry containing D.H. Lawrence's Self-Pity. This gift honors her courage and the key role she played in the mission success. So the moral of the story is if the Navy tries to set you up to fail, just outsmart them, kick your trainer in the groin, and make sure to keep a backup snack in your pocket, because surviving on stubbornness and secret carbs is the real Navy SEAL way.